Me and my cousin Jake had been planning the Appalachian Trail for almost a year. We were both in decent shape, had done some shorter backpacking trips before, and figured 10 days on the trail would be tough but manageable. We started up in Tennessee and were heading south toward Georgia. The plan was to average about 15 miles a day, sleep in our tent or at the shelters if we could find them empty, and just be out in nature for a while, get away from everything. First few days were fine. Weather was a little damp the first day, but it cleared up. No big issues. We saw some deer, lots of squirrels, a few snakes, even a bear off in the distance one afternoon, but it wasn't close. Nights were cold, but manageable. It was day 4 when we found the rock. We were somewhere near the North Carolina border, pretty far from any main road. We were walking a stretch of trail that was kind of narrow, steep drop on one side, uphill slope on the other when we passed a giant boulder maybe 7 feet tall, covered in moss except for one side. It had words carved into it. Not just scratched in, but really carved, like someone had spent hours doing it. It said, "If you see this, go back. He follows at dusk." First, we just stopped and looked at it. I remember staring at the letters. They were deep, not like a knife or even a rock had scratched them, more like chiseled. Looked like they'd been there a while, too, maybe years. The edges were smoothed a bit. Moss was growing close to the text, but someone had scraped around it to keep the words visible. I took a picture of it. We both laughed. Thought maybe some creepy guy with a sense of humor had done it, or maybe it was part of a scavenger hunt or something. Didn't seem like a big deal. We hiked on. No signs of anyone else on the trail. That night, we set up camp about 12 miles past the boulder, just off a flat part of the trail near a dried-up creek bed. It was a quiet night at first. Made a fire, cooked some dehydrated chili, talked for a bit, then crawled into our tent. It was maybe 10:30 when I heard it. A sharp crack like a stick breaking. Loud. Close. I froze. Listened. Then nothing. Maybe 30 seconds later, another snap. A little closer. I sat up and whispered to Jake, but he was already awake. He said it was probably a raccoon or maybe a deer moving through. I didn't say anything else. I lay back down but didn't fall asleep for a while. Nothing else happened that night. In the morning, I stepped out of the tent and froze. There were boot prints in the dirt, maybe 10 or 12 feet from where we'd slept. One set, definitely not ours. The heel-to-toe marks were clean, like someone had walked quietly through soft ground. They came in from the woods, stopped near the tent, and went back the same way. No wandering around, just straight in, straight out. We hadn't seen anyone for at least 2 days. No campsites, no shelters nearby. I looked at Jake. He saw it too. Neither of us said much. We packed up fast. Next few days, the same pattern. Hike all day, find a spot to camp, cook, try to sleep. But every night we heard it. Snapping branches, soft footsteps, always just outside the firelight. Always just far enough that we couldn't see anyone, but close enough that it didn't feel like an animal. It never came rushing in, never made noise like a panicked deer or a curious raccoon. Just slow movement. I call out sometimes, but there'd be nothing, just silence. Then, 10 minutes later, another twig snap. We started taking turns staying awake, doing 2-hour shifts. I'd sit outside the tent with the flashlight, eyes peeled, trying not to blink too long. Every time it was my shift, I felt sure I'd catch a glimpse of someone, but I never did. Nothing ever moved, but the sound was always there. Branches cracking, footsteps in the leaves. By day 7, we were jumpy, tired, hungry. Both of us weren't talking much. We just wanted to finish the trail or at least get close to a road where we could call someone. That afternoon, we came to a rest hut. It was an old wooden shelter, like the kind you can sleep in during rain. Half a roof, 3 walls, open front, with a bench and a place to sit your pack. There was a trail notebook on the shelf. People write in them, leave notes, trail updates, whatever. I flipped through it, not really expecting anything. But near the middle, someone had written in big letters, underlined, "He only follows the loud ones. Don't talk. Don't run. Don't look back." No date on it. No name. Just that sentence. I felt sick when I read it. I handed it to Jake. He read it too. Neither of us said anything. We didn't stay there. We just kept walking. Didn't cook that night, didn't make a fire, just kept going. It was already getting dark, but we hiked anyway. For the first time, we hiked past dusk. Flashlights on, boots dragging. The forest felt tighter. Every noise sounded like it was following us. We didn't talk at all. At some point that night, I heard footsteps behind me. Not off in the woods this time. On the trail. On the dirt. I stopped walking and held my breath. The steps behind me stopped too. I didn't turn around, just kept walking. The footsteps came back. Soft, steady, matching my pace. Jake was maybe 10 feet ahead of me, and I could see him stiffen up too. He heard it. We pushed on, 14 miles straight, didn't stop once. I don't remember most of it. Just trees, dark, my own breathing. Once, my flashlight started flickering, and my stomach dropped. I smacked it a few times and it came back on. Around 2 or 3 in the morning, we hit a gravel road. No traffic, no houses, just road. We crossed it and slid down into the ditch on the other side and lay flat. Didn't speak, just lay there in the mud, backpack still on, faces in the grass, hearts pounding. After a while, I must have passed out. So did Jake. Sometime after sunrise, we heard a car. I stood up and waved it down. It was an old man in a pickup. He pulled over, looked at us, and didn't ask any questions. Just told us to get in the back. We rode to a gas station about 20 miles out. I called my brother. He drove 6 hours to pick us up. Jake didn't say a word the whole drive home. I kept thinking about the boot prints, the noises, that sentence in the notebook. I kept hearing the footsteps matching mine, how they stopped when I stopped, how they never came close but never went away, like whoever it was knew how far to stay, like they'd done it before. I haven't been on a trail since. Jake quit hiking altogether, sold his gear. I kept mine, but I can't bring myself to use it. Sometimes I still look at the picture of the rock, the carving, the words. I don't know who wrote it. I don't know who follows the loud ones. I just know we were lucky to be quiet, lucky not to look back, and lucky we left when we did. I had planned the hike for months. The Grand Staircase Escalante area had always been on my list, especially the canyons. Dry, massive, layered with colors that shifted as the sun moved. Most of the place feels untouched, quiet in a way that makes you feel like you're walking through the past. I wanted solitude. I wanted quiet. I didn't realize what that kind of quiet really meant until I was deep in it. I started early on a Monday morning. The trailhead was empty, as expected. I signed in at the small box near the parking area. Just my name and the date. No cell service. I wasn't worried. I had 5 gallons of water split between 2 bottles and a bladder, enough dehydrated meals to last a week, a satellite beacon, a map, and a compass. I knew how to use all of it. I wasn't new to solo hikes, and I had done longer ones before. But the Grand Staircase felt different. More isolated, less touched by people. That was the point. The first day was hot. Dry heat that saps your energy without you even realizing it. I followed a wash most of the morning, then climbed over a low ridge to a narrow canyon. Shade was rare. I stopped every hour to rest, sip water, and check my bearings. The red rocks burned against the blue sky, and silence pressed in from all sides.
No planes o overhead.
No rustle of cars, just my boots, my breath, and the occasional bird. I set up camp the first night near a dry creek bed. I found a small overhang to block some of the wind and staked my tent into the hard ground. I boiled water for a meal, ate quickly, and lay back on my sleeping pad, watching the stars stretch overhead. The sky looked impossibly big, and without light pollution, it was like looking at a painting. I didn't sleep deeply, but I wasn't anxious, just alert. That's how it usually goes when I'm alone in the wilderness. The second day was much like the first. Long, steady walking. I saw lizards darting across the rock, a couple of jackrabbits, and maybe a distant coyote, though I only caught a glimpse. Still no people. That didn't strike me as strange. Most folks don't hike this far out unless they know what they're doing. I followed the plan I had laid out 3 days in, then 2 back out. I knew where I'd camp each night, where the dry washes were, and where I'd have the best chance to find shade. That second night, I pitched my tent at the base of a rock wall. It was a good spot, flat, shielded from wind, not too close to any cliffs or loose rock. I made another dehydrated meal, drank a full bottle of water, and tried to settle in. My muscles were sore, but nothing serious. Just that deep kind of tired you get after being on your feet all day. I zipped into my sleeping bag around 9, left the rainfly open to let the breeze in. The stars were out again. I watched them until I drifted off. Somewhere around 2 in the morning, I woke up, not sure why at first. I lay still, heart beating slow and steady, listening. The wind had picked up slightly, moving through the canyons with a low hum. But something was different. There was a sound, soft but clear, whistling. At first, I thought maybe the wind was squeezing through some narrow crack nearby. That can make strange sounds. But this was rhythmic. A tune. Not quite a song I could place, but it had a pattern. Then, between the whistles, I heard something else. Footsteps. Soft, slow. Like someone walking carefully on sand and gravel, not wanting to be heard. The sound moved around my tent. Whistle. Step. Whistle. Step. I lay frozen. My sleeping bag was up to my chin, and I didn't move a muscle. I didn't even breathe deeply. I didn't bring a gun, just bear spray, and even that was zipped in a side pouch of my pack. I couldn't get to it without making noise. The whistling continued for what felt like forever. Sometimes it faded, like whoever was making it had walked away. Then it would come back, louder, closer. Once it was right outside my tent. I could hear breathing, not an animal. It was too steady, too human. I stared at the roof of the tent, my heart pounding now. Sweat pooled at my neck. I didn't know what to do. Should I yell? Make noise? Turn on my headlamp? Or stay still? I stayed still. Eventually, the sound drifted away. It didn't rush off, didn't panic. Just faded, like someone walking slowly, deliberately, into the desert. I didn't sleep after that. I lay there, eyes wide, until the first light broke over the canyon wall. I waited another hour before unzipping the tent and stepping out. I walked a slow circle around my campsite. Footprints, human, bare feet, big ones spaced like someone walking slowly. They circled the tent twice, then veered off toward the wash. I packed up fast.
No breakfast.
No coffee. I shoved everything into my pack and started walking. I wasn't even thinking clearly, just moving. I didn't check the map for a new route or consider my food supply. I just walked. By midday, I had covered more miles than I planned. My legs ached, and the sun was brutal. I found a shady spot near a dry wash and dropped my pack to rest. I sat down, catching my breath, trying to drink slowly even though my mouth felt like sandpaper. Then I saw it. A mirror, sticking halfway out of the sand. Old square, maybe 8 inches wide. The glass was cracked, the edges chipped. I stared at it for a long moment before I picked it up. Underneath, in the dirt, someone had written something with their finger. "You look tired." I dropped the mirror, just let it fall and backed away. I didn't stop again that day. I didn't eat, didn't drink much. I just walked. I followed the sun, checking my compass occasionally, staying on course. My legs cramped. My mouth was dry, but I didn't care. I had to get out. That night, I didn't set up camp. I didn't stop. The moon was nearly full, and it cast enough light for me to see the trail. I walked through the night, stumbling sometimes, brushing against cacti and sharp stone. Every sound made me flinch. Every shadow looked like someone waiting. I saw the ranger station at 4 in the morning. Just a small outpost, 3 miles from the trailhead. The lights were off, but I didn't care. I sat down on the porch and waited for morning. I never looked back toward the canyon. When it got light, I walked the rest of the way to my car, got in, and drove straight to the nearest town without stopping. I didn't even take off my boots. I just kept going. I told someone later, a ranger, about what happened. About the footprints, the whistling, the mirror. He just nodded. Said I wasn't the first to mention something like that out there. I've done a lot of solo hikes since then. Colorado, Montana, even Alaska. But I never went back to Grand Staircase. I never will. Some places are quiet for a reason. I left the parking lot just after sunrise. The trailhead was empty, and the sky was clear. I remember checking the forecast 3 times the night before. No rain, no snow, nothing unusual. I had my pack loaded up with water, some jerky, a first aid kit, a flashlight, 2 extra layers, and a topographic map of the area. I wasn't planning on camping, just a long hike to clear my head. It was one of those remote trails in the Sierra foothills, steep, quiet, not popular at all. That was part of the reason I picked it. I wanted the silence. I didn't want to see anyone. The first few miles were easy, just dirt and dry leaves underfoot, tall pines on either side, a few birds here and there, nothing loud. It felt peaceful, and I liked how everything smelled like warm earth and pine sap. I walked for about an hour before I passed the old fire road. It was mostly overgrown, just a faint line cut through brush and rock, but I remembered seeing it on the map. It used to connect to an old fire lookout tower. That tower wasn't on modern maps anymore, but I'd read about it online, something about it being shut down in the early 90s. Curiosity pulled me toward it. I figured I had the whole day, and I was prepared. The road climbed steeply. I had to watch my footing on loose rocks and old roots sticking up. The forest got denser as I went higher, thicker undergrowth, more fallen branches, and a strange silence that settled around me. Not the peaceful kind like earlier. This was heavier. Not ominous, just quiet in a way that made you pay attention. I kept walking. Maybe another hour, maybe more. I lost track of time because there wasn't much else to focus on. I didn't check my phone. It barely had a signal at the trailhead, and by now I was sure it had none. The higher I got, the less sun came through the trees. The light was filtered, grayish, cold. When I reached the tower, I almost missed it. It was hidden by trees, set back from the road. The thing was half collapsed, old steel frame rusting, the wooden platform above covered in fallen branches. The lower ladder had been pulled off or rotted away. I didn't try to climb it. I just walked around the base, listening. That was the strange part. I realized I hadn't heard a single bird in a while. No wind either. Everything was dead still. There was an old utility shack near the base of the tower, just a metal shed on concrete blocks. This door was broken off, leaning against the side. Inside were empty shelves, rusted tools, broken glass. I didn't go in. I stood at the edge, looked in, then turned back to the trees. Something felt wrong. Not like danger exactly, just wrong in the kind of way that makes your stomach feel hollow. I figured it was time to head back, and I turned around. The trail looked different. That was the first moment I felt a real twinge of fear. I walked the same path out as I came in, but the road was harder to follow now. Overgrown spots looked even more closed in. Trees that I swore weren't there earlier now leaned in at odd angles. I shook it off as my imagination. Still, I picked up my pace. Maybe 10 minutes down the path, I saw something that stopped me cold. A pile of rocks. Not natural. Someone had stacked them, maybe knee-high, right in the middle of the trail. Balanced perfectly. They hadn't been there earlier, I was sure of it. I crouched down to look closer, checked the ground around it. No footprints, no animal tracks, just those rocks, balanced and still. My chest tightened. I stepped around them and kept walking. The trail was fading, not just overgrown, fading like it had been wiped away. Bushes that I'd moved through earlier were now solid. Branches leaned into the space where the path should have been. It didn't make sense. I stopped, pulled out my map, checked my position. I should have been halfway back to the main trail by now, but nothing looked right.
No landmarks.
No ridges, no bends in the trail I remembered, just thick trees, rocks, and silence. I tried cutting through in the direction I thought was correct. I checked my compass, pointed south, good enough. I figured if I kept heading south, I'd hit the main trail eventually. The brush was thick and unforgiving. Thorns tore at my sleeves, and I had to duck under low branches. My legs were scratched up, and my arms stung from pushing through. I kept checking my compass. South, still south, but the sun was wrong. It had been over my shoulder when I came in, and now it felt like it hadn't moved at all, like time was stuck. I started to worry about the daylight. I hadn't packed a tent or a real sleeping bag. I had no cell signal, and I hadn't told anyone exactly which trail I was taking, just the general area. That was my mistake. I told myself it was fine. I didn't want anyone checking in. I hiked for another hour, maybe two. Still nothing. No trail, no tower, no sign of anyone. I started yelling. Not names, just sounds. Just to hear something. I got nothing back. Not even echoes. That silence felt like a wall. I started to feel watched. Not from any one direction. Just that sense of being seen without seeing. I kept moving. As the light started to drop, I found a clearing, small, just enough space to sit without brush. I forced myself to calm down. I ate some jerky, drank water, tried to think. I didn't want to panic. I knew the worst thing you can do when lost is keep moving blindly. So I stayed put, waited for the sun to move enough to help me reorient. It didn't move much, but the sky eventually dimmed enough to push me into action. I used the flashlight to move carefully. Every noise snapped my attention. Cracks in the underbrush, sudden rustles. I never saw anything, but I felt it. Something out there, not just animals. I knew how animals moved. I'd spent enough time in the woods to tell a deer from something else. This wasn't a deer. It didn't make sense, but it wasn't. I finally saw something. A wooden post sticking out of the ground. An old trail marker. Faded paint on it, unreadable, but it was human. I moved toward it and found the path again. Not the same one I'd come in on, but a path. Real dirt-packed, walked on. I followed it fast, almost running. I didn't care where it went. I just wanted out. It led to an old campsite. Fire ring. Logs. Trash. Signs of people. But nobody there. Looked abandoned, maybe days or weeks ago. I stayed the night there, huddled in my jacket, eyes wide open. Every sound snapped my nerves again, but nothing came close. By morning, I kept following the trail. Hours later, I found a service road. From there, it was just walking miles but clear. Eventually, I heard engines. A dirt bike passed me, and I flagged the guy down. He looked surprised to see me, said I was way off any known trail. He pointed me toward a ranger station a few miles down. I never found that fire tower on any current map. I traced every satellite image I could afterward, nothing. I don't know if it was removed or just forgotten. I reported the weirdness to the ranger. He didn't have much to say, just nodded like he'd heard things like that before but didn't want to talk. I think about that stacked pile of rocks a lot. I think about the trail vanishing behind me. I didn't hallucinate it. I wasn't dehydrated or sleep deprived. Something happened out there. Something I can't explain. Not ghosts. Not fantasy. Just something wrong, something off. I haven't hiked alone since. I don't know if I ever will. I used to work search and rescue in Colorado, based out of Eagle. Spent 6 years with the team. Most of our calls were people getting turned around on trails, sometimes twisted ankles, dehydration, or people who pushed further than they should have before sunset. But every now and then, you get a call that sticks with you. One that you carry for a long time. For me, it was Darren. It was late July, hot days and cool nights, the kind of weather that makes people feel overconfident. Darren was 35, experienced, knew his stuff. He'd been up in the Flat Tops wilderness before, and this time he went solo. No issue with that, plenty of people do, but he had a sat phone which gave us some comfort if something did go wrong. According to his permit and log, he planned to be out 3 days. We got the call on day 5. No check-in. No return. Last satellite ping from his phone was 2 days prior, about 15 miles into the bush. The terrain was rough but manageable. Thick pine, uneven ridgelines, a few old rock slides scattered through. No cell service out there. We knew time was already against us. I went in with Mike, another SAR guy I'd been working with for a few years. Good man, level-headed, and tough. We flew in by chopper and landed on a narrow clearing about 2 miles from the last ping. Right off the bat, we picked up what looked like his trail. Some crushed brush, slight boot prints. From the way they looked, we guessed it was probably a day old. Darren moved light, probably only a small pack. We followed the prints for about 2 hours before we hit a narrow ledge overlooking a drop into thick timber. There were signs he might have slipped, disturbed gravel, broken twigs, but no sign of a fall. Nothing below either. It was strange. Most people who go over a ledge leave something, torn fabric, blood, something. But this was clean. We fanned out, checked both sides, dropped down a little, but didn't find anything. Around mid-afternoon, as we were moving uphill through a cluster of boulders, we picked up something odd on our comms. A voice crackled through the walkie on the open channel. Not loud, not clear, but it stopped both of us in our tracks. "Help! I'm here. It's Darren. Can't see. Can't move. It's watching me." We just stood there, letting the static roll until it cut off. I've heard garbled signals before, wind, overlapping channels, but this was a voice. Distinct, weak, like it wasn't meant for us, but still came through. Mike looked at me. I could tell he was thinking what I was. It was Darren. We tried hailing back over and over, switching between channels, asking for confirmation. Anything. Nothing. No GPS ping. No follow-up. Then, after a few minutes, the signal came again, even fainter. "It's cold. I didn't fall. Don't let it take me." After that, just static. We stayed there a long time, just listening. It didn't make sense. The sat phone's last ping had been 2 days ago, and there was no indication Darren had a walkie compatible with ours. Even if he did, he'd need to be on the same frequency. It didn't add up. Still, we marked the spot and kept going in the direction his trail had been headed. Terrain got worse. Denser woods, a lot of deadfall and tight gullies. We found a few more boot prints, then nothing. It just stopped, like he vanished mid-step. We searched for 3 more days, extending out in every direction, sweeping back toward the ledge, up ridges, down valleys. Dogs couldn't pick up anything.
No gear. No torn fabric.
No food wrappers. Nothing. Just gone. Then on the 3rd day, in a shallow tree basin, we found his sat phone. It was 10 feet up, resting in a pine tree like someone had placed it there. Not dropped. No broken branches. No sign of how it got there. It just sat wedged in a crook of the branches, as if someone had reached up and stuck it there. Mike had to climb up to get it. The battery was nearly dead. We plugged it into a portable charger and looked through the gallery. Only one photo stood out. It was the last one he took, time-stamped a day before the last sat ping. Just a selfie, Darren's face in frame, lit by flash. He looked panicked. Eyes wide, mouth open like mid-scream, like something startled him just as he pressed the shutter. At first, that's all we saw. Then Mike pointed to the reflection in his eye. There was something there. Something small but sharp-looking, like a shape not quite human. Angular, like something crouched just out of view, close to him. We stared at that image for a long time, trying to make sense of it. Could have been a shadow, a trick of light, but something about it didn't sit right. We brought the phone back, handed it over to the officials. They ran their checks. Nothing new came up. The audio we caught couldn't be traced. The photo didn't show enough for anyone to be sure. The official report lists Darren as presumed dead. Cause unknown. I never liked that phrasing, but we didn't have anything better. His family held a memorial a month later. The whole thing bothered me more than I want to admit. I kept thinking about that signal. His voice coming through like that. The way he said, "Don't let it take me." That wasn't panic, it was fear. Sure, but a different kind. Like he knew what was coming and couldn't stop it. And then the sat phone. In a tree, 10 feet up. I've been on over 100 searches. Seen what hypothermia does. What panic does. How people act when they're scared and lost. But this wasn't that. Darren didn't leave gear scattered in desperation. He didn't try to signal or mark his trail. He just vanished, like someone reached down and pulled him out of the world. After the report closed, Mike and I sat down over a beer, talked through everything again. We ran theories, animal attack, disorientation, even foul play. but nothing fit. No tracks, no blood, no signs of a struggle. No human scent trail past that last boot print. Just one picture, one voice transmission, and a phone in a tree. I quit that fall, put in my papers, packed my gear, and moved down to New Mexico. I told the team I was tired, burnt out. Truth is, I didn't want to go back into those woods. Not after what we heard. Not after what we found. I still go hiking, but never alone, and never anywhere near the flat tops. Sometimes, when I'm walking in the early morning and everything's still and quiet, I think about that voice crackling through the radio. How clear it was. How scared he sounded. I don't know what happened to Darren out there, but I know he didn't fall. He didn't just get lost. Something else happened. And whatever it was, I want no part of it. We started the hike around 8 in the morning. The trail was part of a state forest in the Pacific Northwest, something we found online a few days before. The website said it was a 5-mile loop, easy to moderate difficulty, not too steep, with a lot of moss-covered rocks and pine trees. It sounded perfect. We were both used to weekend hikes, and this one didn't seem like anything special, just a relaxing day out. The parking lot at the trailhead was small, maybe room for 6 cars. Ours was the only one there when we arrived. I remember locking the doors, double-checking that I had my phone, battery pack, trail map, snacks, and water. My girlfriend tied her jacket around her waist and adjusted her pack straps, and we started walking. It was chilly that morning, and the trees were dripping from overnight rain. Everything smelled like wet bark and cold air. The forest felt empty, just birds in the canopy and the sound of our boots crunching over the gravel and pine needles. There was no wind. The first couple of miles went fast. The trail was easy to follow, clearly marked with small wooden signs nailed into trees every so often, painted with white arrows. I remember we passed a small wooden footbridge, and about a mile later we climbed up onto a ridge that gave us a view of the tree canopy spreading out in every direction. It was beautiful. Everything was still damp, and the sun was breaking through the clouds in thin lines, making the moss glow a little. We didn't stop much, maybe just to drink water and take a few photos. My phone still had signal back then. I checked the GPS trail map app around 9:30 and everything looked fine. We were following the loop like it showed. We figured we'd be back to the car around 11, maybe 11:30. At some point around 10:30, the trail split. It wasn't on the map, or at least not in a way that made sense. One side dipped down through thicker trees, the other kept going straight. We picked the straight path because it looked more traveled. There were more boot prints in the mud. That's probably where we messed up. About half an hour later, we realized we hadn't seen a marker in a while. I pulled out my phone to check the GPS again, but the app wouldn't load. No signal. I tried rebooting it while we kept walking, but nothing came back. My girlfriend said she didn't remember seeing a fork in the trail on the online map. I didn't either. We decided to keep going forward, thinking we'd eventually loop back. But we didn't. We kept walking. The terrain didn't change. More moss, more ferns, more of the same narrow trail bending through the trees. I started to notice the same types of fallen logs, split down the middle with fungus growing up one side. The same forked tree with 2 trunks leaning away from each other. It all started to blend together. By noon, we should have been back at the car. Instead, we were still deep in the woods with no idea where the original loop had gone. I pulled out the paper map, but it was barely any help. It wasn't detailed, more like a brochure for tourists. It had a few landmarks, creeks, the footbridge we'd passed, the ridge, but no real topography. No alternate trails. No distances between markers. I could tell we were going in circles, though. That much was obvious. We started paying attention to landmarks. Every time we saw something that looked familiar, we'd stop and try to remember if it was the exact log we'd passed earlier. We started marking trees with sticks or stacking little piles of rocks next to the trail to see if we passed by the same places again. We did, but the weird part was that sometimes when we got back to where we'd made a mark, it was gone. Or at least it didn't look like how we'd left it. That's when I started feeling uneasy. We stopped talking as much. We were both getting tired. We hadn't brought enough food for a full day. just granola bars and trail mix, and we were rationing our water. Around 3 or 4 in the afternoon, the trail sloped downward again, and that's when we saw the backpack. It was just lying next to a mossy log, half covered by ferns. Faded blue with one strap torn off. I picked it up and checked inside. Most of the stuff was ruined. Everything was wet and smelled like mold. There was a granola bar still inside, but it was soft with rot, and a crumpled receipt from a gas station. The date on it was October 2023. That was about 6 months before our hike. There was no phone, no wallet, just the backpack, alone in the dirt. I stood there holding it for a while, not sure what to do with it. Eventually, I set it back down. I didn't want to carry it. Felt wrong. I didn't say much. My girlfriend didn't either. Her face had gone pale, and she looked like she was about to cry. I think that's when she started to really break down. She had been trying to stay calm, trying to treat it like a mistake, but something about the backpack made everything real. Someone else had been lost out here. The sun started going down. We hadn't seen another person the entire day. Not a single voice, no other hikers, no sounds of people in the distance. Just forest, just silence and the sound of our own breathing. Around 6 p.m., my girlfriend finally sat down and started crying. Not loud, just quietly, the kind where she didn't want me to see. Her face was dirty and scratched from some brush, and her jacket was soaked with sweat and mist. I sat next to her and didn't say anything. There wasn't anything to say. The light through the trees was getting darker, softer, fading into shadows. Everything looked the same. No matter how far we walked, we couldn't find a way out. We kept walking anyway, even after it got dark. We turned on our phone flashlights, even though the batteries were already low. That's when we saw the tent. It was about 15 feet off the trail, tucked between some thick trees and under a leaning rock. At first, I thought it was just trash, something someone had left behind. But when we got closer, I saw that it was a tent, old and half-collapsed, with holes in the sides. The fabric was torn and mildewed. Nearby, under the edge of a fallen tree, I saw what looked like bones. At first, I thought they were from a deer, but they were too long. The way they were shaped, the length of the femur, the curve of the ribs, they looked human. I didn't touch them. I didn't get too close. My girlfriend stood back on the trail, not moving, her flashlight shaking in her hand. I felt cold in my stomach, like something dropped straight through me. I told her not to go near it, and we left. We didn't talk about it. That night, we set up our emergency blanket a good distance from the trail, deep in the trees where we couldn't see the tent. We didn't light a fire. We didn't eat. We just curled up, our backs against a thick tree trunk, trying to stay warm. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard something moving in the woods. Sometimes I thought it was just animals. Other times it sounded like footsteps, but I didn't move. I just waited for morning. When the sky started to brighten, we packed up fast and started walking again. We were stiff, hungry, sore. We followed the trail the same way we had the day before, not expecting anything. But after only 20 minutes, we saw a wooden sign up ahead, one of the original markers, pointed to the parking lot. We followed it, and the car was right there. The sun had barely cleared the trees. It was 6:45 a.m. We got in the car and drove straight back to town. We didn't talk much on the drive, just silence and the sound of the tires on the wet road. I thought about reporting the tent and bones to someone, but I didn't even know exactly where we'd seen them. The whole area felt like a blur. I didn't know if I could even find it again. I told myself I'd go back one day and mark it properly, but I haven't. Every few months, I check missing hiker reports online. Usually I don't see anything that matches, but I still remember that receipt. I remember the date, the name of the gas station. One day, maybe I'll see a name that matches the area and the time. Maybe someone's brother or daughter or boyfriend went out there and never came back. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if we hadn't found our way out that morning. If we'd walked in circles again. If we'd lost the flashlights, or if it had rained all night. I think about the bones, the tent, the backpack. None of it felt like a story. It just felt like something that happened. Something that could happen again.